The town of Crossfield was one of those places you don't find unless you're already lost. Once it had thrived, built on the clatter and hum of the old mill perched on Mill Road. It employed half the town until the machines went silent one rainy autumn in '92. Since then, Crossfield had been rotting from the inside out, like a fish left too long in the sun. That's where Abby Doyle came in. 26, pale as the November sky, carrying more ghosts than luggage. She'd come back to Crossfield, the town that killed her mother and drove her father to drink, looking for a reset. Or maybe penance. Her job at the new fulfillment warehouse, built in the shadow of the shuttered Wexler textile mill, was dull enough. Scanning barcodes, taping boxes, losing hours in the windowless gray of fluorescent lights. But lately, the other workers whispered about things moving beyond the chain-link fence, just past the floodlights. Figures slipping between broken windows of the old mill, shapes darker than shadows. When Stan Gibson, a forklift driver, didn't clock in one Friday and no one could reach him, folks just blamed the usual: pills, booze, bad luck. But when Lisa Cranston, always reliable, vanished the following week after working the graveyard shift, the mood changed. People stopped parking near the mill. The manager said nothing, but everyone noticed how they doubled security and bolted shut the side doors closest to Mill Road. Abby, however, couldn't leave it alone. The night Lisa disappeared, Abby swore she saw someone, or something, standing in one of the mill's broken upper windows. A silhouette thin as wire, head cocked too far to one side. Abby wasn't new to ghosts. Her mother died inside that very mill during a late shift when Abby was just a kid. A freak accident, everyone called it, but no one explained why they found her mother's body locked inside a loom room that had supposedly been out of commission for months. She remembered sneaking past the chain-link fence the night before the funeral, staring up at the empty windows, feeling something staring back. That memory had never left her, and neither had the nightmares. When Abby asked her father about the old days, about the Wexler mill, he just muttered into his whiskey glass. "The mill takes what it's owed," he said. "Always has." One stormy evening after another worker went missing, Abby returned to the mill with a cheap flashlight and a half-dead phone. The wind smelled of old oil and mildew, thick enough to choke on. Inside, the machinery stood frozen in rust and cobwebs, but the air thrummed faintly, like a heartbeat under the floorboards. In the main hall, she saw them, rows of workers, shadow-thin, heads down, arms moving in slow mechanical motions as if threading invisible needles or weaving cloth only they could see. Their faces were featureless smears of gray, flickering like film reels stuck on repeat. Then one of them, bent, skeletal, turned to her, and its head twitched unnaturally, like a marionette. "Clock in," it rasped. The voice sounded wet, as if spoken through torn fabric. Abby stumbled back, but the floor shifted beneath her. The machinery coughed to life, belts squealing, looms clattering in the dark, fed by empty air. The whole place pulsed, alive. Through an office door marked Wexler, owner, Abby found faded ledgers and a ledger titled Special Contracts. Inside, lists of names, hundreds. Some crossed out, some circled in red. She flipped to the back and found a section labeled Current Labor Force. There, under the date of her mother's death, was her mother's name. The ledger whispered as she read, pages breathing. And then she saw her own name, written in smudged ink beneath pending induction. The shadows pressed closer, surrounding her, faces melting into grins stitched from darkness. The mill wanted her, needed her. She bolted through the corridors, but every door led back to the factory floor. The looms whirred faster, spinning threads she couldn't see but could feel wrapping around her wrists and ankles. A voice, her mother's voice, rose from the machinery. "Stay, Abby. You've always belonged here." But Abby wasn't the scared little girl who once ran from this place. She pulled free and hurled the ledger into the roaring machines. The mill screamed, metal buckling, shadows writhing like worms under a hot sun. She fled into the night, the town's sirens wailing behind her as the mill's windows erupted in crimson light. The mill still stands, charred but intact, silent again, for now. No one in Crossfield talks about the disappearances anymore, but every once in a while, the lights in the upper windows flicker on after midnight, and the faint sound of looms clattering echoes down Mill Road. And Abby? She left town. But sometimes when she passes a construction site or hears a sewing machine hum, she feels the phantom tug of unseen threads tightening around her wrists.